Welcome to Finding God in the world of video games.
I just can't. Can't even.
Where are we? What's happening?
I can't even right now.
Do you want to talk about it?
Okay, so I was looking forward to Avengers coming out, right?
Yes.
And apparently it's not anymore.
No, it's coming out.
Well, it's delayed. It's not coming out when I wanted it to come out. So now I have no idea what I'm going to look forward to. I mean, I guess I kind of have Iron Man to look forward to. That's coming out pretty soon, isn't it?
We are Iron Man?
Yeah.
Well, about that. It got pushed back.
Are you serious?
To May. Yes, Iron Man VR is coming out in May.
Okay. So, I guess we have Final Fantasy, right?
Well, we do. It's moved to April now. It's not coming out.
Okay. What is happening right now? Nothing I want is coming out when I anticipated it to come out.
This is the sound of inevitability. This is the end, well, of a console cycle anyway. This is the end of this console generation. This is the final year of seeing these new titles to come out. So hold tightly to your pre-order receipts for Animal Crossing. Hope and pray that comes out on time, and buckle up for the ride.
Okay, so I think I'm getting the picture now. Literally almost every single highly anticipated game in the first half of the year has been pushed back as we enter this painful final year of the console cycle.
You can practically hear the gears churning and groaning as publishers switch their priorities to developing games for the upcoming PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, and it's no mere coincidence that titles such as Cyberpunk 2077, Avengers, Watch Dogs Legion, these are seeing significant delays amidst the rumors that the next generation versions of these titles are being developed simultaneously alongside the current generation versions. The priorities are shifting. Over the next several months, we should brace ourselves for even more bad news as the once fertile ground of our PS4 and Xbox One landscape begins to dry up and our favorite developers move on to the greener pastures of the future. The straight talk is that even though we have some amazing titles left before the final curtain drops on this generation of consoles, there certainly remain some challenging and disappointing days ahead until that glorious future hits.
You know what the funny thing is?
Do tell.
So I would have never been disappointed if I would have never even known what the launch dates were supposed to be for any of these titles.
You're not wrong, but if you think about it, we were all pleasantly surprised to even get a release date on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. We've been waiting for that for a very long time. And the fact that Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out on current-gen consoles at all is honestly very surprising, and it's very nice that they're doing that. But the problem is we normally build ourselves up and we get all this anticipation and excitement about these specific dates when we're given them, and we start making plans around that. And then when it doesn't come through, we almost feel like there's a promise that's not being kept by these developers, even though they gave it with the best of intentions in mind.
So, I mean, why do they even do this? You know, create release dates that they can't deliver?
Well, honestly, there's a few aspects here, and it's the curse of being a video game developer. They get very excited about sharing about their passion projects as early as they can, and they want to fan the flames of their fans' interest in it, so they start releasing information very, very quickly, honestly, many times before it's ready. On top of that, you do have publishers that are demanding to hit certain release windows for retail reasons and such, so they've got a few different components to this, and then, of course, you have the simple fact of the matter that they're working with evolving game engines, which can either push up or delay their progress. Many times we even see developers that change entire game engines in the middle of development, which is obviously going to push back a very anticipated release into a window it previously wasn't going to be part of.
You know, I'm really starting to wonder if we would have been much better off not even knowing what these release dates were to begin with.
Well, the truth is we don't really need release dates. We want them. But to be honest, in our daily lives, we operate in a very similar fashion. We live in a way that we like to have these very confirmed, committed, guaranteed futures. We like the stability of paychecks that are the same every single time we receive them. We like the predictability of routine maintenance on things to make sure that they are always working. And honestly, I think a lot of times we appreciate these very secure, if maybe somewhat monotonous daily routines.
I mean, I don't know about all that. That definitely doesn't sound like me. I'm not about that boring, rigid, routine-based life. I like spontaneous. I like surprises. I like to live dangerously.
Sure you do. So next time, let's see how you feel. Do you really think that's how you feel? So the next time, let's say that you sit down on the toilet and you're taking care of your business.
Oh no!
So you'd appreciate if the toilet just spontaneously decides it's going to flush upwards instead of downwards.
That's not what I meant.
You don't like that. Okay. Well, let's say when we go outside and we go to get in the car, let's say that instead of the car being there's just a flock of pigeons. Now we've got to lasso them together, and we've got to Mary Poppins our way to the grocery store.
No.
Or carrier pigeons.
That would
Maybe
never
that's not
happen.
how they work.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it's not that we probably like surprises so much, but we only like good surprises. Maybe is a better way to look at it. The actuality is when things are important, we do like a certain amount of structure. Mm-hmm. It's okay to have surprises as long as they're pleasant, happy, better than what you expected, not so much when it flushes up and splatters all over you.
Gross.
It's a good verbal picture. Yeah. When it comes to the basics of life, we tend to appreciate a very limited amount of deviations from our safe zone. Even the most adventurous and carefree soul, like you, have certain areas of their life that they prefer to remain static, safe, and predictable. But in our walk with God, that stability is not necessarily provided in the manner that we would prefer.
Like our video game release dates, we would like the Lord to give us very solid, concrete information about our future so that we can plan for it. And we would really like Him to not only make this path clear and easy to understand, but we would also like all the problems and payments taken care of up front. And as we will see in the upcoming scriptures, well, that isn't quite the way He operates.
If you've ever held a Bible in your hand that has maps in the back, you've probably seen one of these before. It's a map of the Apostle Paul's missionary journeys. Paul is probably the most well-known missionary of all time, and he traveled all over the map quite literally to build churches and spread the message of Christ. But here's the funny thing that you may have never thought about. Paul was never given this map. His Bible did not have these maps in the back of it. It didn't even have the second half of the Bible in it because he was still living it. Heck, he was still writing it. So let me show you what didn't happen first. This is a hypothetical conversation between Paul and God. Hey Paul, how's it going?
Nah, just chilling.
Sweet. So here's a map of the next 10 years of your life. Make sure you follow the arrows so you don't get lost. I color-coded them to make it easy for you. The magenta one is going to be last. Make sure you don't mix it up with the purple one.
Got it. Now, did you already make reservations?
Please. Who do you think you're working with? It's all right there in your itinerary. I already paid for all the reservations in advance. Just show them your card and you should be good to go. Don't forget to scan your frequent traveler card because I'm kind of counting on those miles to help pay for Peter's trip next month.
Got it.
Now, I know that probably seemed pretty absurd, but honestly, that's what many of us seem to expect from our walk with the Lord, that somehow this is some all-inclusive, all-expense-paid, here's your itinerary advanced trip into what God wants for us to do with our lives. And everything is conveniently prepared for us upon arrival. We'd all prefer if He'd give us that whole plan in advance and all the provisions that we need up front. Well, let's take a look and check out the scriptures and see how this really worked for Paul. So we see here in the book of Acts, we're observing what Paul is doing in his beginning of his missionary journeys here, and we see that his path to his next stop has absolutely nothing to do with well-laid plans of travel or some reservations to a nice hotel. No. He is being chased actively out of the city that he is in with violence, where they are attempting to stone him, and goes to the next stop by running away from his previous experience. So probably not what we would all consider the ideal travel plans. And it'll probably become more clear as we continue and move to this next verse, where we see in Acts chapter 16 that Paul wants to go to one place in the region of Galatia, and God says, no, you're not going to go. As a matter of fact, you don't get to go to Asia at all. So they travel to another area, and they want to go into a place called Bithynia. And God says, no, not that either. And as they continue moving on, now they're in Troas, God finally just comes to him in a dream and sends him a person from Macedonia in a dream, says, we need you to come to Macedonia. That's where you're supposed to go. So instead of getting some nice drawn-out itinerary where he knows exactly where he's supposed to go, he's literally being chased out of one place, shut out of the places where he would like to go, where he intends to go, and then finally God says, all right, here. let me just spell it out for you. You're going to Macedonia. This is what's happening right now. Now let's look at one more here in 1 Corinthians, where we see exactly what does this look like for Paul on a daily basis. I mean, at least his expenses are covered, right? Maybe a little per diem to keep things, above the board for Paul. No, not so much. He says, to the present hour, we hunger, we thirst, we're poorly clothed, beaten and homeless. We're laboring and working with our own hands. This is not the sign of him walking into maybe a well-laid plan from his perspective, where he walks into a nice red carpet, got hotel reservations, and he gets to deliver on God's work for him. No, this is the absolute opposite of that. It almost sounds like chaos in action. We'll put a few more verses behind us just so that way you can have a few more points of reference. The point of all of these, and each of the ones that are going to be showing behind us here, is to demonstrate really just a couple of very simple critical points. That throughout his missionary voyages, Paul did not have a map to know exactly where he was going to go and what his next step was. And he also didn't have provision pre-lined up for him everywhere he went. Every single step of faith that he had to walk, and every place that he went, all he knew at that time was what he was supposed to do there. And then God would provide for him what was next from that place where he stepped. There wasn't some grand plan that he could read off of and say, I know where we're going. He had to just take one step at a time.
Well, I mean, it's just like the rest of us. Paul was operating under the guidance and provision of God to receive his daily bread. No long-term map, no deposits, no reservations, just a walk of faith from one spot to the next.
And most of the time, he didn't even know what the next stop was. As a matter of fact, he would often get the guidance from the Lord while he was literally on the run, and on the run for his life in many of these circumstances. And now we can look back and we can see this nice little map in our Bible and say that this was a carefully crafted missionary journey and an example of the most successful evangelistic crusades of all time. But I guarantee that's not how it felt to Paul at that time.
If you're anything like me, free falling is not your preferred way to fly either. But this is the life that the Lord has called us to do. Not to wander aimlessly and carelessly, but with a purpose that only our Creator can see. He's not going to give us our desired release date up front, because then we would no longer be walking by faith, would we?
Now, let's keep it real. If we knew the end game up front, we would probably run straight forward. We would take the shortest possible path to the finish because we can, because we know where we're going. Exactly. We would thank God for the directions. We would pull out our phone, plop those into our GPS, head off to the races like we're Leroy Jenkins, and do yourself a huge favor. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to Google it. We wouldn't check in with God again until one of his check bounces. And then we might say, okay, God, what's going on? But we would run off trying to do things in our own power and our own capabilities. The Lord has called us to a life of dependence on him for daily guidance as well as provision. He has shown he will provide everything that we need to make the next step, but not giving us all the provision for the entire journey up front. This walk of faith will keep us connected to him and ensures we never try to accomplish his will through our own strength or our capabilities. So if you're wondering when the Lord will follow through on what he has promised for you, I have some pretty simple advice. Ask him what he wants you to do today with this current step that you're on, right now, with whatever you have in your hands. He will give you what you need for each step along the way. His ways are higher than our ways, and his promises will never miss their release date, mostly because he doesn't typically provide one. But you can rest assured that when we look back over the map of our life, it will all make sense, and we will see that he was always right on time.